I think as leaders, where, and we don't maybe even intentionally try to do this, but when we're trying to pastor somebody or lead somebody, shepherd somebody, encourage somebody, I think a lot of times we try to get them to look more like us when really we just need to get them to look more like Jesus. And I think that's where we maybe get a little bit caught up in the policing and it's when we try to form people, we try to shape people into what we think they should look like instead of like letting God do the work and like pointing them towards him. And so like, man, I really hope my songs do that is not like just try to encourage you to like be more like how I think you should be or live like how I think you should live. And hopefully it's like, man, it just points you to Jesus, points you to God, how God says you should live and what he wants you to become. Because we can have very different ideas, and that's a beautiful thing for anybody who's like kind of coming back to what you said a minute ago, just who's been hurt by people like in the church or in ministry or anywhere. I've had some really interesting moments in my walk and being a part of the church for years and since I was little, and it's really hard to lose trust. But one thing I've just decided to, and I've seen, not just believe, but I've actually seen it. And God, I have testimonies of this, is where I've been hurt by people trying to help me. Right. But I think their intention was good, but they're really trying to form me into maybe what they wanted me to be, and not actually what God was doing, what he was saying for my life. And the quicker that I chose to forgive, the quicker I saw God use that opportunity. And, there's that scripture that says what the enemy meant for evil, God will turn for good. And I think if you can go into one of those situations or look back and you can allow God to turn that for good, I've seen friendships that I've been hurt by, like actually be strengthened through that. And we've actually somehow, by the grace of God, now trust each other even more because we've had the hard conversations and so I've really watched God do that in my life. And so I just wanted to say that for anyone listening who's been hurt, man, like God can absolutely use that situation, even though it's really, really tough, and bring good from that and teach you something and teach them something when there's vulnerability, there's authenticity, when there's forgiveness. And hopefully I didn't go somewhere different that you didn't want to go, but I just wanted to say that, we're all flawed.
That's exactly where I want to go. And I also want to give some airtime to these beautiful heroes of love that are within the church that are just unspoken. It's easy to identify and sometimes over-identify with our woundedness and like where somebody let us down and all that. But I want to lift our eyes and say, think about the people who lifted you up. Like there's a long list of people that faith was important to them, and they just quietly, they're not rocking it in front of a lot of audiences and all that. They're just quietly loving on people and doing the kinds of stuff that Jesus said, man, you stand on a corner and make a big deal about everything, that you got your reward, you got your little golf clap. But I just think of the scores of people that have just quietly demonstrated a lot of patience where I wasn't justified. I hadn't earned it, but they were just patient with me. And I just like quietly being love's heroes. And many of them are in our brick buildings with steeples on them. They're not all there. The guy at the tire store is pretty nice dude too. But to just say, instead of just thinking about like, I've got another grievance, like this person let me down and they did that. And then Southwest was late and all that. It's easy to get distracted by some of that and to say, man, like, tell me about the mailman that walked through 1.5 feet of water in Dallas last week to get somebody. Granted, it was a phone bill, but they got the mail there. Like, I really, really I want to make sure that we're given equal time to those things. And it's just, they call it, I live way out in the bush. You got to come up to this place sometime. It's just like my nearest neighbor is 10,000 square miles away. It's just in the bush. And it's either a really long boat ride to get there or a pretty long seaplane ride. And so I ended up with this pilot's license so I could get in and out of this thing on this rickety old seaplane.
No
And
way. Wow.
yeah, and the first thing they teach you is situational awareness. What you do is they want to scan the sky, right? That'd be kind of intuitive, so you don't like hit something. But then chunk it up like 10% of the sky at a time. Take a really hard look at 10%,
Mm.
then a little really hard look at 10%. And if I do that in my life, I've just kind of like, I got the big picture of who Bob is, but then to take, for all of you listening, just take 10% of your life and just say, look about
Wow.
how your relationships are going. Are you keeping up? Are you like just snorkeling in the top foot or two of your relationships? Because Jesus just said you could shipwreck dive. Like we could actually go down there together. We could buddy breathe. Like, let's just go deep and see what happens. And I know it's scary because you might get like burned again. But you know what?
Right.
I didn't come to snorkel. I got, we each got about 4,000 weeks here. I'm not spending it in the top 2 feet. And then you could say finances are freaking you out. Like to just say, let's just see what that's connected to. And maybe you need to get a job or get a better job or do something different or start buying less saltwater taffy, whatever it is. But to just take a dive and to say, what are the real pieces of that? You might be strapped by some real live, honest to goodness, like medical bills or whatever it is, but get real with that and to say, is there anybody adjacent to me that could be like really helpful? There's a great verse in 2 Peter 1:3. It says, God has already given us everything we need to lead beautiful, godly lives. So to say, if God's already given me you, I got a musician. And if he's given something else, he's got another person. So let's think about ways that we could continue on in doing what we're doing in really practical ways.